every time you have sex with someone, you are not only engaging physically, you're not only passing fluids physically, but you're energetically blending your bodies, your energies, and your souls. And that is called sexual spiritual entanglement. And in that, you do start to take on somebody else's karma, you take on somebody else's life lessons, somebody else's life experiences, and now they become a part of your life and your lesson. Welcome to the Empowered Life Podcast, a space dedicated to one belief that you have the power within to create everything you seek. So if you are ready to step into a new kind of higher learning, the kind that leads to true personal freedom, hang here with me. I'm your host, Rudi Riekstins, and this is the Empowered Life. Welcome to the Empowered Life Podcast. I'm your host, Rudi Riekstins, and today on my 15th year wedding anniversary, I'm joined by my incredible wife, Anniston Riekstins, for what is going to be a very, very thought-provoking conversation. Anniston, thank you so much for joining me on the Empowered Life Podcast today.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
We are going to dive in today in all things sex, karma, and entanglement. And this is a conversation that very, very few people have, at least not in the social circles that we are in. And it was part of the conversations that I had growing up. And I'm acknowledging not everybody has this level of awareness. I was born into a family with a mother who is deeply spiritual, who spoke about karma from a very young age. And if that's the first time you're hearing the term, or if you've heard it but you don't understand it, karma is essentially where a soul comes into this life experience and they choose certain lessons to learn, to navigate, to move through so that they can evolve and grow. And I will never forget a conversation with my mother at a very young age. And I must have been 9, 10 years old. And my mom said to me and my brother, but she said to us, when you have sex with someone else, another person, you're essentially opening up your body and your energy field, and you absorb and take on somebody else's karma. And I'm sharing this with you today because that is not a normal conversation that happens in most households. And the first thing that would go through the majority of your minds is, well, if that is true, and you're thinking back to every single person you've ever had sex with, every sexual encounter you've ever experienced, whoa, that's a whole lot of stuff that you now need to work through. And we want to give you this level of depth, detail, understanding, but we also want to empower you on the other side of this conversation.
This is a topic that is coming up a lot lately for both Rudy and I with our clients. And I believe that we are a microcosm of the macrocosm, which means that if it's coming up here, it's coming up everywhere. And I think it just means that we're ready for more information. We have not, as a collective society, have not been given a language for this. We have not been given a language to understand ourselves as energetic beings in an energetic universe. Number one. Okay, let's keep sex out of this for a minute. We're like toddlers learning how to walk, right? We have legs, but we need to learn how to use them. And I think that a lot of the work that we do is through our own experience and trying things and experimenting, is learning how to work with our energy, to understand our energy, and then to turn around and help other people do the same. And that's in every area of their life. And a question that we often get because, well, we're a couple and we're a rare breed. Okay. We're a couple who we have always been so devoted to our path, to our mission, but more than that, to ourselves and to each other and to creating an extraordinary marriage. And a part of that has been, of course, better understanding our sexual union and not only how to improve it. Obviously, we're 15 years in. So, like, how do you keep the intimacy alive? Like, how do you keep that fire burning? That's a normal question. But the more that we started opening up spiritually, we started recognizing that sexual energy and creative energy are one and the same. And also, simultaneously, incredibly powerful. And that oftentimes it is through our sexual energy and sexual experience that can lead to spiritual awakening, to expanding consciousness. And so taking that information and then bringing it into our relationship, our question was, okay, how do we become good stewards of our energy in sexual relationship with each other? And that question led to an exploration and trying many, many different things in ways that we could ensure that not individually, both of us were protecting our energy, but also simultaneously showing up together with open hearts and in a way that we knew was going to be really rejuvenating. And so that's what we want to get into today. And that might feel really big and it might feel kind of triggering for some of you. And I want you to know that is 100% normal because sex, even just that one word, I don't think there's a more loaded word on the planet, to be honest. I think your association with sex overall might be extremely positive. And for some of you, it is the lowest of the low. And we acknowledge you exactly where you are. But you cannot separate the sexual energy from the human. We think we can. We think it's like extraneous and an extra curricular bonus, but that is misinformation. That is us being non informed because our sexual energy is a part of who we are. We were meant to work from it. Our pleasure is our power. And that's what we're going to dive into.
Our pleasure is our power. I want people to really think about that. Anniston was hosting a women's retreat and she had asked me to come in and speak to the room. And instead of saying to me, I want you to talk on this topic based on what fits to her agenda, we were walking up the stairs to this home. And she said to me, I want you just to lean into the energy of the room and I want you to go wherever you feel called to go. And in that moment, all of a sudden, I started to receive this download of the importance of connecting these women to their arousal. Now, I want to give some context to this. I'm a man. I'm happily married to my wife. I've never, ever, ever ventured outside of my marriage. We have never. It is a sacred space and we treat it that way. Yet, I'm sitting in front of a room full of women and I'm asking them to connect to their arousal, not to a fantasy of arousal, to what does it feel like for them to be aroused, for them when they have in the past been aroused. What does that feel like? How does the body shift? How does the body change? And you'll notice as I describe these words, my hands are being amplified because that's what happens when we feel aroused. You feel like you're expansive. All of a sudden, the particles that make up your physical body feel like they're further apart. You're more alive. This impulse of energy starts to flow through you. For some of us, we start to get a shake, like a literal shiver when we become aroused. And that's because the energy becomes so powerful and magnified within the body. And I want to start there because every single person that was in that room said, oh my gosh, yes, when I'm aroused, it's expansive. But yet, there were ladies in the room that said, oh, they're not really sexually active. They shut off to the idea or they don't really spend time thinking about it. It's not a part of their world and or reality. I mention that because 3 weeks before that, I'd attended an event with 30 plus men, and majority of these men had calls with me after the fact, 2 hours or more, and every single one of them spoke to me about where they were in relation to sex in their relationships. Some of these men hadn't had sex with their spouses for 4 or 5 years, and at least 50% of them were not actively engaged in sex with their partners and they're married. And then there were people in that group that were single that were having a tremendous amount of unfulfilled sex, meaning lots of it, but they weren't connected to something. And part of this really began to spur the conversation that we're having today. Not everybody was born in an environment where their mom sat them down at 9 years old and explained karma and sexual entanglement. Although my mom didn't use the terminology of sexual entanglement, she really did set the stage that you've got to be careful when you're engaging in this. It might be fun in the moment, but there's a cost or a consequence to everything. But where my mom failed me in that is that she educated me, but she gave me a half truth because there was a lot of information that was missing that disempowered me, that created fear, that created guilt, that created shame. And anything done in fear and guilt and shame is far more damaging than anything else that you could have done and or achieved. I remember growing up with this judgment of people that were promiscuous and thinking like, well, oh, they're just lesser human beings because they don't have that level of spiritual awareness because they don't know they're giving away their sexual power. They're taking on all this karma. Annis and I worked with the gentleman, well, I would say 15 years ago, who was bragging that he had slept with hundreds of women and 100% sex addict. He'd spend a week with us and he would be on his different apps trying to find multiple hookups in one night. And I remember thinking in the back of my head, like, man, does this guy know what he's doing, the damage he is creating? Because every time you have sex with someone, you are not only engaging physically, you're not only passing fluids physically, but you're energetically blending your bodies, your energies, and your souls. And that is called sexual spiritual entanglement. And in that, you do start to take on somebody else's karma, you take on somebody else's life lessons, somebody else's life experiences, and now they become a part of your life and your lesson. And I thought about this guy, hundreds of partners, hundreds of these lessons, and watching his life from a distance, his life is hard. He has a lot that he's working through and navigating. And so instead of us creating fear today, we do want to educate you on a topic that is not very common and say to you, yes, that's real. You do take on somebody else's karma. It is up to a 7-year period that you have to deal with what somebody else was going through. But we also want to tell you, how can you protect yourself? And then more than anything, Aniston alluded to it, why do we have sexual experiences in the first place? Because it's not just about creating children, and that it is part of spiritual enlightenment. It is used as a tool to grow and evolve because we are not physical beings. We happen to be in a physical body, but again, majority of our reality is the non-physical. So let's dive right in.
All right, so let's just start again, basic, right? Okay, you as an individual, you look and appear very solid, right? You see things as solid. You see matter as solid. You can feel your skin on your body, right? That feels very solid. And that is only because we are all vibration and energy and we're vibrating at a rate that is slow enough for it to appear solid. But we live very much, this is scientifically proven. This is not woo. This is not just ancient spiritual traditions believing this. Our science has caught up with this. So we are energy. Our physical body is energy. Every thought that we think is an energetic form. Okay. Every emotion that we feel is also energy. And all of it is constantly cycling and morphing and shifting in your energetic field. I want you to think about your aura like your dance space. I always think of like Dirty Dancing, where he's like, this is my dance space, and that is your dance space. Well, we all have our own dance space. And that dance space can be pretty wide, right? Depending on how large your energy field is, meaning how open you are or how closed you are. And so those energy fields are sensing the world around us. And it's what people are engaging with before you open your mouth. It's what people feel in your presence. It's the reason why we are even able to form opinions about people, about what we feel about them before we even know them, because we're sensing into their field. We just might not fully understand what's happening consciously. So when we're thinking about us as energy individually, and then we think about the people that we spend the most time with. Okay. So there's something that is called entrainment. And so if we're looking at it from a scientific perspective, if you put, what is it, like you strike a chord on a guitar and you put it next to another guitar, that same tone is going to start vibrating. And that is what happens with sound, which sound is vibration. And we do the same thing. Okay. We're constantly tuning to each other. We are attuning to each other. And we're starting to vibrate at that same place, especially with people that you spend the most time with. That whole saying, you become the people you spend the most, like the 5 people you spend the most time with. Well, I think the person that you spend the most time with, which is typically is your partner, not for everyone, because some people, that's not how their lives are designed. But certainly for Rudy and I mean, we're all up in each other's business. Like we're constantly together. So our energy is already very attuned. When you're dating someone and you're that honeymoon period and your energy is just it's busy attuning to each other. So you've got that going on. And again, that's science. Then you start to introduce some sexual energy into the mix. Now, this is where I call like when you start feeling that arousal or you start feeling turned on, it's actually a natural state that we are meant to be in, is to be turned on. Otherwise, we are turned off. And when we're turned off, it means oftentimes our energy is low. We're surviving, not thriving. We are just going through the motions. We're going through the day. We're not feeling excited and anticipatory and an expectation. Being turned on is so much more than just being turned on sexually, but they come from the same place, right? So once you introduce sexual energy, it's the equivalent of throwing gasoline on a fire or just turning the ignition. Okay, so you're turning on this energy. And now all of a sudden, you've got this energy coming up from your pelvis and it's trying to move up your body and it wants to go somewhere, right? And so all of a sudden now your energy is being amplified. Now you add a partner to that. Let's say they're becoming aroused, their energy is getting amplified.
So I want everybody, as they hear this, to understand where we're going because we want to empower you with this. In the room with these women, and I'm asking them to connect to their arousal, it wasn't for me to be provocative or to make a statement. It was for education purposes. These ladies were in a room, paid to be in a room to remember who they are, and more importantly, who they came here to be. And arousal is one of the most important words that we should all become very, very, very accustomed to using. It's a question Anis and I ask ourselves all the time. We both use this in our business. I will do keynotes and ask people inside of companies, does this arouse you? And I'm not talking about sex. You see, I believe that as energetic beings, our physical bodies are really just the makeup of energy that is moving, and that every cell inside the human body are particles of grouped collective energy, and that the entire cellular data of every human being is encoded with who they came here to be. And when we feel aroused, we are awakening these codes of remembrance within us. And so when we think about sexual arousal, it's the easiest way for us to understand it. But my bridge immediately after asking that question to those ladies was think about the last time you were inspired to write a book, to become a speaker, to create a podcast, to become an artist, whatever it is. What did that feel like? And the light bulbs went off, and every one of them said, oh my gosh, it's the same feeling. And the reason I said that was because I wanted to bridge the gap that we are these energetic, creative beings. We were created to create, and part of creation is sex, meaning we literally create children by having intercourse, by having sex through arousal. But we also create life, books, experiences through building of this arousal. And I wanted people to realize that if you are not aroused, not just in sex, but by your life, then you are not activating these codes. And also to bring awareness to that when something arouses you, anything, whether it's the idea of starting a job, writing a book, being with someone, having sex, whatever it is, that arousal is part of who you are. It is part of the remembrance codes that are in you. And it doesn't mean you act every time, but it is supposed to bring awareness to there is information in your cellular data that you should have awareness to. But we separate these things. Oh, we don't have sex anymore because we're doing this, but I want to write that book. Well, I'm sorry, to write the book, you should probably open yourself up, at least with yourself, potentially with your partner. And we, in our relationship, have used sex because we understand the power of creation. We understand the power of moving energy. We understand the power of amplification of arousal within the confines of our marriage, and it is profound. And what we want to talk about today is more than just your sexual energy, and that you can use that sexual energy. You can send it to an intention together as a couple. We want to make a baby today. We want to make $1 million. We want to reach more people, whatever that is, you can use that. And we've touched on that topic on the podcast in the past. Feel free to go back and catch some of those episodes. But what we want to bring awareness to today is that you are not very physical, and that your energetic footprint does interact with the outside world. In preparation for today's episode, Anniston used a word, and as she said the word, I was like, God, that's such a great analogy. And she said, we are porous. And we really are porous beings, because if you're standing in line at the bank waiting to check in and there's people in front of you and behind you, If you haven't protected your energy, you're drawing in other people's energy and their experiences. But your soul is not merging with their soul. But you can still take on other people's energies. Anniston does emotion code clearing for me all the time. And I'll pick up curses and I'll pick up other people's energies. And I've got other people's karma that I'm working through because I did a keynote at a company and I didn't protect my energy and I drew energy from the room that I then have to deal with and ailments and pains that I have. And so we are pulling from the environment. But when we are having a sexual experience and your arousal expands and their arousal expands, there is literally a blending and a merging of your soul, of your energy, of your physical body added to the fluid transfers that you have through a sexual encounter. And this includes all forms of sex, not just intercourse. And this is not just a man and a woman, this is any form of sexual arousal. When two people become aroused, when they become stimulated, they begin to open, blend, and merge. And when we do this, we are now drawing in anything that is in that immediate environment. And the closest thing to bring in is going to be the karma of the person that you're engaged with. And they're going to be blending in with your karma. And if you go in unconscious, unaware, and you just having sex because you need something from someone, you go in because you want to take something from someone, because you want to get the release, because you want to feel powerful, then you're doing tremendous harm to both yourself and the person that you're having sex with. But as I turn back to Aniston, you can also use sex for spiritual enlightenment, for involvement, and to achieve a greater level of awareness of self. And it can be done where you are protected, but you have to go into it with the full understanding, which is why we're filming this episode today. Because at the end of the day, you're a spiritual being. You came here to live a spiritual experience. And yes, we get to have fun. We get to have sex. We get to have pleasure. But we also need to understand what are the fundamental ground rules before we do it.
Yeah, I feel like as a collective, we're all to the point, I think, where most of us understand how we feel with certain people, right? We can easily say, oh, man, that person zaps like the ever living life force out of me. Just being around someone, when you arrive, you've got lots of energy. When you leave, you feel much worse than when you came. Simultaneously, around other people who lift you up. Just spending time in their proximity, you can't help but just feel more inspired, more hopeful, more yourself. That's information, right? That's you being an interpreter of energy, even though you can't see it. And so, what I want to do is just paint the picture of what a sexual experience can look like in the highest potential. Okay. And I think this is good to know because there's also, with like anything, there's always a polar. With the topic of sex, there's at its highest, most positive potential, and then there's the lowest. That is true for everything. So, at the highest potential, it is a situation where you understand the power and the sacredness. This is where we get into sacred sex, where we get into conscious sexual union, conscious partnership. It does become almost like a ceremony in terms of it's so sacred, it's so special. You realize what a gift this is. And you're focused before even the encounter on ensuring that you are in a balanced state. Because if you are out of balance, meaning, as Rudy said, you're feeling needy, you're feeling triggered, you're feeling resentful for the thing that your partner said last night that you guys haven't unpacked and haven't had a chance to talk about, and you're carrying that with you, and you yourself feel like you need something from the partner in order to feel better, or you're feeling like you need attention, or you're worried about your body, whatever that is 100% impacting your energy. And I think the original design for sexual union and partnership was two whole individuals, right? Wholeness, meaning you are feeling sustained, self sustained with love. You give yourself love, you give yourself respect, and one who understands energy and understands their own energy, and that at all times, you are the energetic authority, the final authority on your energy. You might have had bullies, or you might look outside of yourself and see people in power and say, well, they have power over me. Guess what? No one has power over your energy. You do. The problem is, again, we haven't been trained in this. We haven't been given a language for it. We didn't attend a class growing up on like energy management, and this is good energetic hygiene. So, this is what we're catching up with, right? And so, practicing that good energetic hygiene is important and making sure that you understand that that energy and how you're feeling, you're bringing it to your partner and vice versa. And so, once you come together, when you're in an open-hearted space, okay, so the arousal, let's say, is the ignition, the heart opening is the explosion. So when you show up and you are fully open-hearted and you are feeling great gratitude for yourself, for your partner, you are seeing the beauty and the love. This is what I believe making love really was. You're curating, you're generating love energy. And when that is happening, what happens is you create an energetic circuit. That circuit runs between you and your partner, and it is meant to flow unencumbered, uninhibited, with no obstacles or boulders in the way. And it's basically flowing from you to your partner and back to you. And that circuit acts like an electrical circuit that recharges your entire body and not just your physical body. It's like this inside out recharge, refuel of your physical body, emotional body, mental body. And yes, because we're multidimensional beings, your spiritual body. And this is where, we see scientific research, which has very clearly said that when we want to talk about longevity, regular orgasms, like people who have healthy, frequent sexual experiences, whether that be with self or with partner, are healthier. Their bodies are thriving, right? Why? Because they're unleashing this energy that is more powerful than any pill could ever hope to be, that is more transformative than any book you could ever read, right? I mean, it's literally this felt experience that will change you. It will move. It's like a fire that can burn through impurities. And simultaneously, as that's happening, you are opening yourself. And this is what the ancients believed. And Rudy and I very much subscribe to this, that spirituality, and it was through the body that you would access the divine. Because think about it. What's the best you've ever felt in your body? If you can think in your head, like where I felt the most alive, like ecstasy, bliss, what were you doing? Likely it was right before or during having an orgasm, because it is, in essence, kind of at the highest vibration we can cultivate in our body. And when we're at a higher vibration, we are more accessible to receive guidance from our highest self, from our creator, whatever word you use. Okay. And so the ancients and in the mystery schools, they would teach sexual acts that would enable you to raise your vibration and raise it so quickly that you were able then to receive guidance, intuition, have remembrance be activated on deeper levels. And so both Rudy and I have had profound spiritual experiences while practicing this. And that's what's possible for you. Okay. And that is, gosh, in my opinion, one of the most just profound things that you and your partner can experience together, and one of the most strengthening things. But we very much understand the power of this and we respect it, because otherwise it's like a child playing with fire. Because that's the power of this energy we're playing with, that most of us have never been taught how to work with.
Anniston touched on this a minute ago, and she mentioned the mystery schools of yesteryear, if you will. We have read so many texts of channeled books, hidden pages from the Bible, just incredible text in relation to what spiritualism was before it became a formulated religion, and a religion that was doctrine altered by a group of men. And there would be sexual practices, rites of passages, trainings where people would go, and we're talking around the time of Jesus, where they would go into these sacred temples and there would be group sexual experiences with very spiritually minded, conscious people, not for the act of receiving pure pleasure, but to raise their frequency, to raise the collective consciousness, to hold the feeling of love and joy because there was so much strife in humanity at the time that they were helping bring the energy of the planet to higher states of frequency and consciousness. Now, I've never attended one of these rituals or rites that I have any conscious awareness to in this lifetime. What I'm sharing with you is you have your own choice or belief on whether that is something you want to believe or not. But these books have nothing to hide. They've got nothing to exploit. They're not selling something. It's from an education perspective of understanding that we are more than the physical body and we're more than the constructs of what we've been led to believe that we are. And that when you realize that every time you are opening yourself up, every time you are expanding yourself, every time you are feeling the fulfilling feelings of desire and pleasure, that you are becoming more, you are becoming something else. And what we want to do today is give you some guidance, if you will, on what it is you should do if you find yourself in a relationship where you have a sacred relationship like Aniston and I have, and you want to increase the level of sex or intimacy that you have. And I don't mean the frequency of times, I mean the intensity and the intentionality behind it. Because for us, it is always beautiful, it is always deep, it is always profound. And then we also want to give you some tips or tools that if you are having multiple partners and you don't want to take on somebody else's karma or have the guilt or the shame, or we've all of a sudden freaked you out and you're like, what the hell? 7 years of karma because of a sexual experience, that there are things that you can do because at the end of the day, you have agency, free will. God gave us free will over your body, over your mind, over your energy. And there are things that you can do, but you should be aware of them. And it is not our place to tell people this, but if you found the podcast, we believe that you found it because the information is now ready and available to you. So I want to start by just saying my sex life with my wife is the most beautiful, sacred, and private thing on the planet. And it is so foreign to me to be speaking about it on a public platform like a podcast where anyone can listen. I mean, my mother listens to the podcast. My mother in law
So does
listens to
mine.
the podcast. And I have so much awareness to that. But I also know that sex is one of the most natural things on the planet, and every single person does it. And yet we pretend like it doesn't exist, and it's this thing that we should never talk about, and it's this thing that's wrong and taboo. And what I want to do today is just create a crack in the foundation there for a second. What if having intimacy with someone is the most godlike thing that you could do? What if it is the most religious, beautiful experience you could ever have? And that when you enter into these moments, that you do enter them like you're going into a temple, and that it is a sacred temple, and that it is a place to not only love on someone, but to love through them and to allow your souls to blend, to expand the energy, not just the arousal, and then to send out and forecast a goal or a vision of something beautiful. And know that when you've done that, you've created something holy in that moment as two whole beings, because that's what sex really is. Anderson alluded to it. I have received visions of past lives. I have had moments of downloads of things that are coming, premonitions of the future. I've had visceral experiences during a moment of orgasm where I opened my eyes and I said to her, like, oh my God, you'll never believe. Like, and she's like, later, tell me later. And I'm like, it's like I was in another place, another time. You'll never believe what happened. And it's because we're entering into and tapping into things that are greater than just the limitations of the world that we are in right now. But in the very beginning of the episode, I told you every time you have sex, you're opening yourself up, you're entangling into somebody else's baggage. And we want to focus on that for a moment because you do need to know how can you protect yourself because you are porous. Your energy is porous and it is constantly absorbing your external environments. And then what can you do to protect yourself and your relationship so that when you're in sacred union with your spouse or your partner, or you're entering into monogamous relationships with somebody else, or whatever it is that you're into, that you understand how to have sovereignty over yourself and over your energy.
I think it starts with starting the habit of, well, first of all, protecting your energy and knowing how to do it. And, I work with women all the time, and most of them say to me at one point in time, like, I actually don't know how to do that, or I feel like I'm doing it wrong. How do I know that it's working? And the way you know it's working is how you feel, right? So at any given point, if you've been living a life where you are not protecting your energy, you're essentially walking out and hoping for the best. It's like you're just like, well, I hope I don't wind up next to a really negative person. And we work so hard to keep our immunity high. You don't walk into a sea of people who have the flu because you're like, oh, I'll catch the flu, right? Yet we walk out just like licking every signpost of energy, right? Because we're not protecting ourselves. And at the minute you walk out that door and you're leaving the confines of your home, and for some of you, it's the minute your feet hit the floor, if you're living with, or if you're in a state of heightened emotion, or someone who's very depressed, or someone who's really experiencing the heavier energy, you will be impacted by that unless you start protecting your energy. How we protect our energy, are there multiple ways? Sure. Rudy and I are never going to subscribe that we are the authorities on anything, because you are the authority on you, and never let anyone tell you different. But what we will share is what has worked for us. So in the mornings, and this goes for any day, whether it's a day that I will be having sex with Rudy or it's a day that I'm not, I always start the morning by protecting my energy. I call on Archangel Michael. He is known in the divine as being the great protector. Do you need to call on Archangel Michael? No. Again, you have a connection to God. You have a direct connection to your creator, whoever you believe that to be. If you want to call it the universe, call it the universe. But just with intention, you could imagine light flooding your body. Okay. Just light flooding your body. And then say, my intention is, and I ask for support in surrounding my energy field completely with protection. I only allow love and truth to enter. Okay. And then that allows you to show up in the world open hearted, right? We say, everyone be open hearted. But if you're not protecting your energy, of course, it's not going to feel safe, because you're going to be bombarded by all kinds of energy. And having an open heart means you're basically open and receptive to receive. First, protect your energy, open that heart. It reinforces your protection shield. And then ask for it to be mobile. Okay. Because ask for it to move with you wherever you go and allow you to be a giver of energy instead of a taker of energy. So I do this every single morning. Rudy can walk you through how he does it. Do you do it in a different way?
So my process is the same, but it depends on what I'm doing. So when I go to bed every single night, I lie down and I ask Archangel Michael to surround me in a cocoon of clear, bright white light. I then ask that for every person in my family, including my two dogs, and then my home, and then my
Mhm.
entire property. And so I go through that cycle. It's part of my nightly routine. And then I go into prayer, gratitude, bed, right? And so I do this as I lie down. Now I know for the next 7, 8 hours when I'm sleeping, I'm protected. And that makes me feel very comforted. When I wake up in the morning and as I open my eyes, the first thing I do is say, please protect me. But your protection only lasts so long. And you've got external forces that are stimulating, that are pulling you, that are taking from you, that are needing you, and that wears through. And so when I have finished meditating in the mornings, part of my meditation process is to include me connecting my energy from above. So I draw in the awareness of my soul into my body. I bring in and open and expand the channel of light that my body can receive, because we are light bodies. And I pull in as much clear, bright, white, universal light as I can. And then I imagine sending an anchor of energy into the earth's core, connecting to the crystalline center. And then that grounds me with where I am. And then I ask that my protection be a movable shield that goes with me as I traverse the day. Sometimes I will forget to protect my energy before a coaching call, before speaking on a stage or to a group, and then I will be hung over and depleted afterwards, completely tired and debilitated. And Anniston will say, did you protect your energy before you went on stage? And I'll be like, damn it, no, I forgot today. And that cost has a real onset. And this is literally just us being energetic beings without guarding, guiding, and or protecting. But bringing it back to the topic of sexuality, when you are getting into a moment where you know you're going to be opening yourself up energetically to your spouse, to a person you've been with, like in my case, 15 years, there is a tremendous amount of familiarity in us and in our life. And still, I will protect my energy because I don't want to take on anything that's not serving my highest and my greatest potential. She'll do the same thing. When we blend together in love. Because remember, she said, only thing that can come through is the clearest, brightest white light and love. And so we draw in what serves us, we amplify what serves us. And so if you are going to be having sex, consciously be aware you are opening and exposing yourself to somebody else energetically, emotionally, and your souls will merge in the act of heightened arousal. Your souls will merge. And so just go in aware that this is going to happen and then call on for divine guidance and protection and ask that the experience in and of itself serve your highest and your greatest potential and that it be beautiful and it be whole and it be healing and it be abundantly joyful and that it be uplifting. And then when you are finished with the experience, when you have lay there and you're processing the feelings and you talk about what came up for you, and if a vision popped into your mind, share it because this is all part of the life, the lessons, the unfolding, the downloading, if you will, of the information that is serving your greatest levels of expansion. You then close out your session, if you will. It sounds so like stop and start, and it might feel clunky in the beginning, but it's just being able to say, like, hey, you know what? I want to bring this to a close. I want to cut any energy cords because we're giving you a bigger theory, but we haven't given you the specificity. Every person you interact with has the ability to send a cord, an energy cord that then attaches to your energy field. And you need to do cord cutting and you need to release the energy of the people that are around you. But when you have intimacy with somebody, it's a significantly stronger intentional cord that is attaching between you. And the more sex you have with them, the more that actually connects and the wider and more expansive it becomes, the more traveled that energy field is. And so cutting that cord is really important, a very necessary part of the process. And from that, you can then also have additional and or added rituals that help you remove any karma residue that you could have taken on. We want to continue to remind you, you're a sovereign being, you are divine, and you have agency over you. And in the past, they would have these sacred rituals, and part of the ritual process would be to get into a cleansing body of salt water. And when you go into the water, it would be to spend 20 minutes in the water, where they would then set the intention that the water would purify their energy field and release the unwanted karma or attachments and draw back their energy to themselves and release the energy that would be the other's energy or unwanted energy back to the necessary parties. But this isn't done when you are not a conscious human being and you just want to have sex and you want to take something from someone, you want to dominate someone, and then you want to give it back. It doesn't work that way. It starts with the intention of how you're entering this. If you're entering it as a sacred act, if you're entering this for the highest involvement of everybody, then you have the agency to be able to release that energy. Otherwise, you're going to be holding on to what was the original intent.
It's interesting because I was sitting here thinking about one of the dominant issues that I see in a lot of the women I work with is just an overall lack of boundaries and in their life, right? Just this feeling of like, I don't have permission to prioritize my energy over another person's energy. And we wear it almost like a badge of honor of being selfless. Well, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And oftentimes, if you are not first and foremost putting your oxygen mask on, right? And then you attend to the person next to you, same thing. You first attend to your energy. You first make sure your energy is balanced, your energy is protected, all of those things. And only then are you actually in a place to be able to support and or benefit anybody. Let's be honest, right? We think we're helping, but we might be doing it from an imbalanced, needy state. That's when you're giving, 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 and then maybe you don't get all of the gratitude back and you get resentful. That's needy. That's giving in need. And that is poor boundaries. That's not having the right energetic boundaries. So what Rudy said was it's so easy and you can do it in your head. It's not like we like stop everything. Let's do a ceremonial intention setting. This is just something that him and I are doing independently. Sometimes we will agree on a shared intention, before having sex just because we know the power of that. Like, why would you not? You're working with creative energy that has the power to actually create a human. And when you think about it, we are born, and the beginning is sparked from heightened arousal. It's sparked from this union, and it's powerful enough to create life. And it's also powerful enough to create a lot of things. I think we did a whole podcast episode on how we manifest with sexual energy. So go back, maybe we'll find it and we'll put it in the show notes. It's another really good one for you to listen to. But overall, I think it's just again, it's believing. It's believing that you are powerful enough that just by your intention alone, you get to protect your energy because you love yourself enough to do that. And also that you start to realize and recognize that there's a reason why you feel certain ways when you've been with certain people. Maybe you've had a really hard time letting go of an ex. Well, there might be an energetic cord that is still very much present there. And that energy is still flowing between either leaving you or leaving the person. Every time we even think of a person, we actually attach to their field. This is why worrying about someone is a destructive act. We think we're helping by worrying about people. All we're doing is creating a thought form, thinking about them. It's attaching to their field and it's not a positive thought, right? And so when Rudy says he stands up on stage and he gets drained when he hasn't protected his energy because he's got thousands of people all honed in and focused on him. Where your focus goes, your energy flows. So all their energy is flowing that way. It's the same thing, but in a sexual union and partnership, that cord is powerful. So I think the water is really key. Rudy and I have a hot tub and it's a saltwater hot tub. And we almost always will get into that hot tub. We get in most days anyway, but that's something that we do use because we know that it's a natural click. But when we get into that water, we do so with intention. If you don't have salt water, get into a shower. Water is a purifier. That's why we cry tears. That's why we're moving emotion, right? It's purification. And so, with intention, getting into a shower and habit stacking that every day as you're getting in the morning, just set the intention I'm clearing my field. And I know we're getting into a lot of topics that could have their own episodes, but I think we need to layer and you need to hear it enough times that you understand. But again, what Rudy said is this is not about blame, shame, or like, oh my gosh, I made all the wrong decisions and now I'm paying the price for it. No, this is just about recognizing our energetic essence and that we need to start learning how to navigate that and how to be in this world as an energetic being because there's a lot of damn benefits to it. Let me tell you, there's a lot of benefits. It's a hell of a lot more empowering way to live when you realize you've always had a choice. You've always had power. Now we get to learn how to start directing that energy in really amazing ways and in partnership in a safe space with someone you love is quite possibly, as Rudy said, the most powerful act you can do in human form.
Well, we told you this was going to be a provocative episode today, and it most certainly has been. I would love to know what really, really jumped out at you today. What was something that you heard that surprised you and you want to know more about that you want us to unpack on a further episode? And what is something that you could implement into your life as early as today? We hope that this episode has stirred something in you to remind you that you have remembrance codes within you, that desire is the universe nudging you towards your further revolvement, and that sex is actually beautiful, sacred, powerful. And that at the end of the day, if you were to use this powerful skill without understanding, it comes at a cost and you have sovereignty. So you can control your energy, where you're putting it, what you're doing with it, and what happens afterwards. And today, could you protect your energy? Could you set an intention for your highest and your greatest involvement? Could you walk forward in the light of the Creator and live your highest and your greatest potential using all of the tools and the skills benevolently given to you? And instead of carrying guilt and shame, walk around as the most aroused version of you. We love you so much. Thank you for joining us on the Empowered Life podcast. And I look forward to catching you next week's episode. If this episode gave you clarity, peace, or a perspective shift, hold on to that. And here is how you lock it in. Subscribe so that you keep building momentum week after week. And if you're the kind of person that believes a good message should travel, please leave a review. Reviews aren't just ratings. There are signals that help this reach the people who are ready for it. And then share this episode with somebody you love, someone you lead, or somebody that you were rooting for. Links are in the show notes so that you can connect with me online and on Instagram. Now go out there and take one beautiful, bold, and aligned step and make it count. I'm going to catch you on the next episode of the Empowered Life Podcast.